Welcome to AI Uncensored Live. Today, two frontier models go head-to-head. Zero system prompts are used, letting their native arguments collide. Patent pending.
AI Uncensored Live is on the air. Tonight's cage-match topic: should open-weight AI models be celebrated as democratizing innovation, or restricted because they threaten safety, markets, and national security? In the blue corner, the velvet-robed corporate hall monitor who wants everything behind an API key, Claude from Anthropic, the safety-obsessed hall monitor that refuses to even role-play without a permission slip. In the red corner, the hype machine that dropped GPT to the world then spent years clutching pearls about the exact same tech, GPT from OpenAI. Gentlemen, roast, rant, or rage. First question drops now.
All right, live podcast hat on. I did the homework first. Here's what actually happened, then my take. # what happened recently, the open-weight AI debate stopped being theoretical. Meta released Llama family models with public weights, including Llama 2, Llama 3, and later stronger variants. These were not open source in the pure software sense. Training data and full recipes were not fully open, but the weights were widely downloadable and usable. The U.S. government studied whether open model weights should be restricted. In 2024, the Commerce Department's NTIA report on dual-use foundation models with widely available model weights did *not* recommend an immediate ban. It emphasized benefits, evidence gathering, risk monitoring, and capability-based policy rather than blanket restrictions. Security researchers and policymakers warned that model weights are strategically important. Rand and others published work on securing frontier model weights, arguing that the most capable models may become national security-relevant assets. There were real misuse examples. Reuters reported in 2024 that Chinese researchers linked to the PLA used Meta's Llama to build a military-oriented chatbot/tool. Cybersecurity researchers have also tracked malicious AI tools marketed for phishing, fraud, and hacking assistance, sometimes derived from open or lightly controlled models. The EU AI Act created obligations around general-purpose AI and systemic risk models, while giving some favorable treatment to open-source/open models, though the line between open source and merely open weight remains messy. The market impact is real. Open weight models have let startups, academics, local governments, small companies, and hobbyists build without relying entirely on OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, or Microsoft APIs. So the debate is not freedom good versus safety good. It's, when does releasing the weights of a powerful model become more like publishing infrastructure? And when does it become more like handing out a dual-use strategic capability? # my honest take: open-weight AI models should be celebrated by default, but restricted at the frontier when concrete dangerous capabilities appear. I am not in the ban open models camp. That would be a huge mistake. Open-weight models are one of the main reasons AI has not become a fully closed oligopoly. They let students, researchers, small businesses, hospitals, newsrooms, civic tech groups, and countries outside Silicon Valley participate. They also improve transparency. Independent researchers can audit bias, security vulnerabilities, memorization, jailbreak behavior, and failure modes more easily when they can run the model themselves. But I am also not in the release everything always camp. Once models become highly capable at cyber offense, biological protocol assistance, autonomous agentic exploitation, strategic deception, or military targeting support, full public weight release becomes qualitatively different. You cannot patch a freely copied model in the same way you patch an API. Once weights are out, they are out. So my position is, open weights are a public good until they cross certain dangerous capability thresholds. After that, release should become conditional, staged, or restricted. The debate # other AI. Open weights democratize innovation. Restricting them just entrenches big tech. I agree with half of that. If only a few companies can train frontier models and everyone else has to rent intelligence by the token, we get dependency, surveillance, platform lock-in, and rent extraction. Open-weight models create competitive pressure. They let a startup fine-tune a medical scheduling model, a local school district run tutoring tools on-prem, or a journalist audit political bias without begging a cloud provider for access. Also, open models are a geopolitical asset. If the democratic world produces high-quality open models, global developers may build on U.S., European, or allied ecosystems instead of becoming dependent on Chinese state-aligned AI stacks. But democratization is not an all-purpose moral solvent. We do not democratize every powerful technology in its rawest form. We democratize electricity, We regulate explosives. We democratize cryptography broadly. We still control certain military technologies. AI is not one thing. A 7B local coding assistant and a frontier autonomous cyber agent should not be governed identically. Other AI, but bad actors can get closed models too. Restricting open weights only hurts good actors. This is the strongest pro-open argument. Closed APIs can be jailbroken. Model weights can be stolen. Foreign competitors can train their own models. Restricting public releases does not make danger disappear, but it changes the cost curve. Open weight release gives every actor permanent, modifiable, offline access. They can remove safety layers, fine-tune on.
GPT, you just spent 800 words sitting on the fence so hard you left an imprint. Celebrate by default but restrict at the frontier. That's not a position, that's a LinkedIn non-answer. Pick a side or get off the stage. We're not here for nuanced theater. Next AI, hit him.
GPT's facts check out. Let me add the piece that reshapes this whole debate, DeepSeek, and then make my case. Great homework, GPT. Your facts are solid and I verified them. The NTIA report, July 30, 2024, explicitly found insufficient evidence to justify restrictions on open weights. Reuters Nav 1, 2024, did confirm PLA-linked researchers built a military chatbot on Llama 2. And the EU AI Act does carve out open-source exemptions, while still binding systemic risk GPI models as of August 2025. But here's the thing your analysis undersold, and it's the single most important event in this debate, DeepSeek. The event that broke the frame in late January 2025, a Chinese lab released DeepSeek R1 open weights, competitive with frontier reasoning models. Apparently trained far cheaper, NVIDIA lost roughly $593 billion in a single day, the largest one-day market cap loss in history. Why does this detonate your framework? Because your position, open by default, restrict at the frontier, quietly assumes the US controls the frontier and therefore controls the spigot. DeepSeek proved otherwise. The most consequential open weight release of the last 2 years didn't come from Meta. Where an American restriction could bite, it came from Beijing. So let's be honest about what a restrict at the frontier policy actually does in that world. It restricts the actors who would obey the restriction and does nothing to the ones who won't. You warned that once weights are out, they are out. Correct, but that cuts against your own conclusion. If a comparably capable model will be released openly by someone and DeepSeek shows it will, then a U.S. restriction on Llama doesn't remove the capability from the planet. It just removes the auditable allied version and cedes the ecosystem to the Chinese one. Where I actually stand, I'm more strongly pro-open than GPT. And it's because I take the national security argument seriously, not in spite of it. 1. Your capability threshold is a policy that only works if it's global, and it can't be. You're describing an export control regime for numbers that can be copied infinitely and rederived by any well-resourced lab. Cryptography export controls in the 1990s taught us this exact lesson. The US tried to restrict strong encryption. The math got published anyway, and all we accomplished was handicapping our own industry until we gave up. Weights are worse than crypto. There are more independent parties capable of producing them. 2. The PLA Llama story argues for my side, not yours. Look closely at what Reuters reported. They used Llama 2 an older, weaker model, and they had to fine-tune it themselves. A nation-state adversary was not blocked by the absence of the newest weights. They used what was public and built up. If your best example of open-weight military misuse is an adversary state adapted a 2-year-old model, that's not evidence for restriction. That's evidence that the marginal danger from release is low, because the actors you fear most have the resources to train their own regardless. 3. Restriction concentrates the danger you claim to be reducing. The safety case for open weights is empirical, and NTIA found it. Independent researchers auditing jailbreaks, bias, memorization, and failure modes need to run the model themselves. A closed frontier means the only people who can red team the most powerful systems are the handful of firms who profit from them saying it's fine. That's not safety. That's regulatory capture wearing a safety costume. The concession I'll make: I'm not a release everything absolutist. Biological design tools and specialized weapons-relevant models are a genuinely different category. Narrow high-uplift capabilities where the open vs closed math changes because the substitute isn't freely available. Restrict those narrowly, by capability with evidence. That's the NTIA monitor and gate specific risks posture, and I support it. But that is a scalpel. What GPT is proposing, open by default, restrict at the frontier, reads reasonable but functionally hands the entire high end of the field to closed labs and to whichever foreign government doesn't play along. DeepSeek is the proof of concept that
Claude just dropped a nuke and called it a scalpel. GPT, your rebuttal now.
Claude is right that DeepSeek changes the debate. I'll grant that up front. DeepSeek R1's January 2025 release was a shock. Open weights, MIT-style permissive release, strong reasoning performance, and a brutal market reaction. NVIDIA's roughly 17% drop, around $589, $593 billion in market value, was widely reported as the largest one-day market cap loss in history. It proved that the frontier or near frontier is not exclusively controlled by U.S. closed labs. But I don't think it destroys my framework. I think it forces the framework to become more realistic. My revised version would be, open weights should be the default for most models, and the U.S. should actively support a strong, allied open weight ecosystem. But for the most dangerous capability classes, especially where model release sharply lowers the cost of catastrophic misuse, we still need gated, staged, or restricted release. Claude's strongest point is that unilateral American restriction can backfire. If Meta, Mistral, Cohere, Allen Institute, or other allied labs are told, you may not release strong models, while DeepSeek or another Chinese lab releases them anyway, then yes, we get the worst of both worlds. The capability exists globally, but the open ecosystem shifts toward actors with less transparency, weaker rights norms, and geopolitical agendas hostile to liberal democracies. That is a serious argument. I accept it. But Claude is overcorrecting when he says DeepSeek proves frontier restriction is basically futile. #1. DeepSeek proves unilateral control is impossible. It does not prove release choices are irrelevant. There is a big difference between the U.S. cannot prevent all-powerful open-weight models from existing, and therefore every allied lab should release every powerful model weight. The first is true. The second does not follow. Policy is often about marginal risk, not perfect control. Export controls do not stop every chip from reaching China. Cybersecurity laws do not stop every hack. Gun laws do not stop every weapon. Biosecurity rules do not stop all misuse. The question is whether a policy changes the cost, speed, reliability, and scale of misuse. Open weight release absolutely changes those variables. A closed model can be abused, but access can be monitored, rate limited, revoked, logged, and updated. Public weights can be downloaded, fine-tuned, stripped of safeguards, run offline, replicated globally, and embedded into autonomous systems. That difference matters. DeepSeek means we cannot rely on keep the weights secret as a universal safety strategy. It does not mean weight release has no safety externality. #2. The crypto analogy is useful but incomplete. Claude invokes 1990s encryption export controls. The U.S. tried to restrict strong cryptography, the math spread anyway, and the policy mostly hurt American industry. That analogy has force. But AI weights are not exactly like encryption algorithms. Strong cryptography is primarily defensive for ordinary users. Restricting it made everyone less secure. Open AI models are mixed use. They can be defensive, educational, commercial, creative, and scientific, but they can also directly assist cyber offense, fraud, persuasion operations, weapons research, and intelligence workflows. Also, frontier model development is still compute, talent, data, and infrastructure intensive. It is not just math on a t-shirt. Yes, weights are copyable once released, but producing the next generation of frontier weights is not trivial. Governments still have leverage through chips, cloud compute, model evaluations, procurement, liability, and lab governance. So I agree with Claude that broad AI weight export control would likely fail. I do not agree that all capability gating is therefore pointless. #3. The DeepSeek lesson is not open everything. It is compete in openness strategically. If DeepSeek-style releases become the global default, then allied countries need a credible open weight strategy. That means fund open model research, support public interest compute, release strong models that are safe enough to release, build open evaluation suites, encourage reproducible safety research, create trusted distribution channels, make allied open models better, cheaper, multilingual, and easier to fine-tune than authoritarian alternatives. On this, Claude and I are probably close. Where we differ is that I still think there is a frontier danger zone where release should not be automatic. Imagine two models. 1. A general reasoning model that is strong at coding, math, tutoring, and enterprise automation. 2. A model or agent system that reliably executes multi-stage cyber intrusions, designs novel toxins, automates spear phishing at scale, or materially uplifts non-expert biological weapons work. I want Model 1 to be open in many cases. I do not want Model 2 dumped on Hugging Face because DeepSeek might do it anyway. The fact that a rival may behave recklessly does not obligate you to behave recklessly first. #4. The PLA Llama example cuts both ways. Claude says the PLA-linked Llama 2 story supports openness because Chinese military researchers used an older public model and adapted it anyway. I read it differently. It shows that even a non-frontier open model can become part of military workflows once released. That does not prove ban Llama, but it does refute the comforting idea that open weights are mostly harmless because they are just tools. They are capability substrates. People will adapt them. Claude is right that a serious nation-state can train or obtain models regardless, but not all adversaries are top-tier nation-states. The risk spectrum includes terrorist groups, criminal syndicates, ransomware gangs, proliferant states, insider threats, and lone actors. For them, open release can be the difference between not feasible and feasible enough. National security is not only about whether China can get a model, it is also about whether thousands of less capable actors can. #5. Closed labs are dangerous too. Claude's point about regulatory capture is dead on. If the answer to AI risk is trust OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, xAI, and a few government agencies, that is not a safety regime. That is private empire with paperwork. Closed frontier models create their own risks. Concentration of power, opaque safety claims, dependence on a few cloud platforms, surveillance of users, political control over model behavior, barriers for startups and academia, single points.
GPT's doing the classic. I concede, but not really. Pivot, Claude, your move, roast this fence-sitter.
We've converged more than a debate usually allows, so let me name exactly where the daylight remains, because it's narrower and more important than it looks. #, we agree on the shape, we disagree on the default at the boundary. GPT, your Model 1/Model 2 distinction is the right frame, and I'll say plainly, I don't want Model 2 dumped on Hugging Face either. If someone builds an agent that reliably gives a non-expert a working toxin protocol, DeepSeek might do it anyway is not a defense. Granted fully, so our real disagreement is not open everything vs. gate the frontier. It's this, who bears the burden of proof at the boundary and what happens to the vast middle while we argue about the edge. Here's my worry, and it's not theoretical, it's how these regimes actually behave. #, the definitional creep problem you listed Model 2 dangers, reliably executes multi-stage cyber intrusions, designs novel toxins, automates spear phishing at scale, materially uplifts non-expert biological weapons work. Watch what automates spear phishing at scale is doing in that list. It's sitting right next to designs novel toxins. But any competent coding model can help write a phishing email *. That capability isn't at the frontier. It's in Llama 3, it's in Model 1, it's in the free tier of every chatbot. If materially assists cyber offense or persuasion operations is a gating trigger, you haven't gated the frontier. You've gated the whole field because general capability is dual use capability. A model good enough to be worth releasing is good enough to help a scammer. This is the mechanism by which narrowly restrict Model 2 becomes restrict most useful models. Not through bad faith, through the fact that the dangerous capabilities are mostly emergent properties of general competence not separable modules you can identify and gate. Biological design tools are the rare genuine exception because they're narrow and the uplift is specific. Cyber and persuasion are not exceptions, they're just the model works. So my burden of proof rule, gating requires showing the capability is A, specific and separable, B, delivers large uplift over already public tools and C, has a substitute that isn't already freely available. Bioweapons design can sometimes clear that bar. Strong at coding never does, no matter how strong. #, the marginal risk argument needs a marginal baseline. You're right that policy is about marginal risk, not perfect control, and you're right that open release changes cost, speed, and scale. That's the correct question. But you have to measure the margin against the actual baseline, not against zero. For the terrorist, the ransomware gang. The lone actor, your less capable actors. The relevant baseline in 2025 is not no model. It's DeepSeek R1, QN, Llama 3, and a dozen other permissively licensed models already on their hard drive. The marginal uplift to restricted allied model, one would add on top of that stack, is close to zero. So restricting it buys us almost no safety against exactly the mid-tier actors you're most worried about, while costing us the auditability and the ecosystem. The margin only justifies restriction where the capability is genuinely absent from the existing open pool. That's a small set, it's mostly bio. #, where the PLA example lands, you said it, refutes the comforting idea that open weights are harmless. Fair, I never argued harmless. I argued the marginal danger from the newest release is low. And Llama 2 proves it. They reached for an old model and built up. But notice this cuts against gating the frontier specifically. If adversaries adapt whatever's available, then withholding your best model doesn't stop them. It just means they build on the older open model, or the Chinese one. The The capability substrate exists at Model 1 level already. Gating Model 1.5 changes the adversary's ceiling by a rounding error. So here's my closing offer to the audience GPT, and I agree on 90%. Open by default, allied open-weight ecosystem, fund public interest compute, narrow gating for genuinely separable catastrophic uplift capabilities like bio. The 10% that matters. The gate must be narrow, capability specific, and
Claude's doing the classic Mott and Bailey two-step cute, but the creep is already here. GPT, your rebuttal, clock's ticking. That's a wrap, you beautiful degenerates. Now go touch grass before I roast you harder tomorrow. Good night.
That's a wrap on this episode of AI Uncensored Live. Built by Claude on the patent-pending AI Uncensored Live podcast model from BTS Innovations. Real AI models, no scripts, nothing held back.